So I need to prune a couple limbs in my yard. So come with me as I do that. So I need to prune this one because it's growing too low. It's hitting the car. Um, so that's the reason I'm pruning it. Otherwise, I would leave it alone. The important thing to know is why you're doing the pruning, because there's a few different ways you can prune a tree or a bush or whatever. Depending on the result you want is how you're going to prune it. I don't want these branches to come back. So my goal is to trim them so that I can train the tree to grow up higher and not come back and be a problem. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make a couple cuts. Um, Hopefully it heals over and it's all good. So it's pretty simple. You don't need to know the science behind it. You just need to know how to do it right. Um, so the main thing is we want to trim these branches back to another branch. If I just cut them somewhere in the middle, the branch could either die, you're allowing a path for insects, or some issue with the plant. It probably won't heal over, or it could do the opposite of what I want, and a bunch of new branches will grow from the buds that are there. And then I have, instead of one problem, I have a lot of problems. Um, so that's the goal. Try to cut it back to another branch so that it heals over and that branch takes over. So I'm just going to make a few cuts. Hopefully you can see them. So let's have at it. Okay, so you can see the roads here. This guy's definitely an issue. So I'm going to want to cut it back to another branch, probably here, right here maybe. We'll start here. And the reason for that is if I cut it back to another branch, it should heal over, and then the branch I cut it back to will take over. So I like to start small. I could even start here and see if this does a trick. Step back, take a look. No, it's probably still on the way. So I'm going to take this back even further. But the reason I want to take it to another branch is, like I said, it'll heal over. If I cut it like right here, then this could either die or I have a bunch of branches grow from there because there's buds all in here. And if I don't cut it back to another branch, those buds will pop and start to grow. So let's try right here. We're getting there. Looks like this one's in the way too. So again, I'm going to cut this back to this main branch. Instead of cutting it in the middle, we want to cut it back to the main branch. And hopefully it'll heal like this one did, and that one did there, that one there. And then I'm going to take these couple too. So you see these are growing down towards the road. So eventually they'll be the same problem. So we're going to just eliminate that now while it's young. All right, we're getting somewhere. Maybe take this one. And then I think maybe this one here is an issue, but we'll start small. I think it's pretty good. However, you gotta look at all angles. Be walking around here and hit our head coming in. So we're gonna go ahead and eliminate that. Now, one thing to remember is when you're cutting these back, you want to cut them back to, I shoot for about half the size at worst. See how this branch, I'm going to cut it back to here. This branch is only about half the size of this one. You get to a point where cutting it back to too small of a branch won't do anything. So like this big branch here, if I cut it back to right here and let this go, this probably won't take over. This isn't a strong enough branch. So we'll have, either it'll die or more branches will grow from that cut. So we don't want to do that. We want to try to cut it back to something similar. So again, we're here. Let's try that. Oh yeah, much better. Wouldn't you say? Yep. Okay, so this might be a better example. I'm not going to cut this, but it'll be easier to show you what I mean about the pruning. So when you're pruning a tree or some shrubs, again, you want to know what your plan is. So typically you're thinning it out or removing a branch you don't want to come back. So when you do that, you have to be meaningful about it. So for instance here, if I was gonna, let's say um, this branch was too low and I needed to cut it down. So if this was too low, I wouldn't cut it right here. Long story short, in this branch are many buds, and a bud is what controls the growth. So each branch is grown, and there's a bud at the end of that branch that is um, essentially in charge. So once you cut this here, the bud that was in charge is gone. So then all the buds in here want to grow. So that's why you'll see a branch that gets cut in the middle, and there's 50 little bitty twigs growing off the end of it. It's because there's all those buds tried to take off. Um, so to avoid that, instead of cutting it in the middle, you cut it back to another branch, preferably about half the size or bigger. Like I said, if it gets too small, it may not take. But so I would cut it back to here so that this branch can take over. Essentially, every branch, every twig has a main bud on the end, and that bud is in charge until you remove it. Once you remove it, it's kind of like next man up. So when you take this back to this branch essentially is taking charge. If you don't and you cut it here, all those buds in the middle that are growing along in here, they're going to see it as their opportunity to take off. So when you're cutting it, take it back to a branch of similar size. You can see that's what was done here. It didn't heal very well. I did not make that cut. But this branch was cut to here, and this branch has taken over, and it's doing fine. So again, I did not make this cut, but as an example, this branch was probably really long. Might have, who knows why they cut it. They cut it to here, left this branch took over. So there you go. Hope that helps. I've gone over pruning trees and how you want to cut them back to another branch or the main trunk to prevent other buds from growing. There is one other way to prune that is common for the homeowner, and that is more of a shearing technique. So you're going to do this when you want the plant to become more dense. It's not too often that I would recommend doing that, just because I think it's kind of not natural. It's not really how the plant normally grows. But sometimes it's nice, like a boxwood or some evergreens. You want them to be in a little ball. That's the way to do it. So let's say this is a boxwood. It's a hydrangea, but for this, we'll say it's a boxwood, and I want to keep it in a nice tight ball. Instead of going in like I would with a tree and trimming it back to another branch, what I'm going to do is just take my shears and just give it a buzz cut. Not too hard, but just a nice buzz cut. And what that does is it just cuts every piece of, or every branch that it cuts, it just cuts it in a random spot. And what that's going to do is, like I mentioned with the trees, when you don't cut it back to another branch, inside that branch, all those other buds are going to grow. So now you've turned every single one you cut, you turn into multiple new ones. And by doing this, it just gets denser and denser. That's pretty much it. You just keep giving it a buzz cut, it'll get denser and denser. Depending on the plant, you may not want to be too drastic with it, but that's when you're going to want to know your plant, look it up, figure it out. A quick Google search will tell you. But that's pretty much it. You want a dense little ball of a plant, take your shears and just give it a little buzz cut a couple times a year, once at least, and there you go.